Should be nice and red. They're just on the verge of starting to turn a little bit in color. And then you also want to make sure that there's no belly burn, right? Careful your cord. There you go. So nice clear eyes, right? And you don't want to see these guys all curled up. When they're all curled up and dried out, that's another thing that you can see from a distance of whether or not the fish is fresh. Okay, the other thing is too, the odor, right? We're all standing around it right now. We can smell a little bit of fish, but it shouldn't be something that crosses your nose and becomes, you know, how do you want to say that? Not nice, right? Anything that, it should have that odor of the ocean. And don't get your gloves in his mouth, because they do have teeth.
What do you mean by belly burn?
The belly burn, yeah. We may see that in some of these guys. What it is that right here, in this vicinity, up close is where the gallbladder is, right? And if they bust the gallbladder while they're taking the organs out, if that busts open, then it burns the inside of the stomach because it's very, very strong. It has a lot of enzymes in it to break down protein. And so what ends up happening is that you actually damage the inside of the fish. Okay? So, let me dry my hands off. All right, so you all gonna see Chef Duroff do this in about 30 seconds. Now, for me, I like using a serrated knife because the rib bones on this fish are fairly thick, okay? And they need a little bit of oomph to go through there. If you do it with a French knife or with your boning knife, you're gonna have a harder time. The other thing about it is too, is it does have a little more surface area to stay flat. And so just follow this for me, and you can do the same thing on the striped bass. What I do is I make sure my hands are dry, right? Because you don't want slimy hands when you're touching your knife, because it's easy to slip. So I lift up this fin. You're gonna see that the striped bass has the same fin. You come right underneath it, and you just make a 45-degree angle cut so that we're getting all of this meat out of here. Because if I cut straight down, I'm gonna miss this whole morsel right there. So come right underneath the gills, right? And cut all the way through. And once I get to the spinal cord, I just make a couple little jobs. And then I turn it over, do the same thing, and take the head off. Okay, now I do that for a very specific reason, and I'll show you why in just a minute. So either way, you can either start on this side, whatever you're more comfortable with. Maybe you want to see it from this side. If you look right here, that's where the spinal cord is. You need to use your fingers so that you can feel it, right? And you come in right above the spinal cord with your knife, nice and flat. And you notice that I'm not using a whole lot of force because this knife is brand spanking new and it's sharper than a razor blade. And so all I'm doing is I'm seesawing back and forth, cutting through those rib bones. And I'm staying as best as I possibly can right along the spinal, right along the midsection of the fish. Okay? I'm holding the belly flap up so I don't cut into it, making sure that I'm not too rough with it.
Morning, Chef.
Morning, Chef.
Good morning, Chef.
Morning. You guys know Chef Kloebel made silver medal
Yes.
and first prize?
Yes. Thank you, Chef.
Awesome.
All right, and so then, just nice and easy, right? Because the thing is if you use one hand with this fish and you let it dangle over one hand, for instance, like if I pick it up like this, it's gonna tear the meat. The meat will just rip wide open, and you want to preserve this as best as possible. And so you can see that the whole time my knife was doing its best to to stay right on top of the spinal cord. Right? Now, if you know the purveyor and you know that the fish is fresh and you know the quality is good, what you can do is you can take a spoon and you can scrape this and you can do many things with it. You can make a force meat, you can make tartare out of this. There's a ton of things that we can do with this, and I'll show you in a minute how to do that. So now
you're using a serrated edge knife to cut it in the middle?
Yes.
Because of the spinal cord, right?
Because of the bones.
Bones. Oh, okay.
Okay. So now, let me show you. If the head was still on here, right? If the head was still on here, it would be like this on the cutting board. And then you've got that angle to deal with and still get a nice fillet. So what I do is I just cut the head off, and that way when I'm lying it on the table, look how flat it lays. It's nice and flat, and it allows me to do a really good cut and guarantee myself that I'm not leaving a lot of meat on that center spinal cord piece, okay? So once again, right above the spinal cord, right? I find out where that's at, and I just come in here and I start very gently slicing away. And I keep my knife angled down so that I'm getting all the meat. And if you look, you can even see that my knife is angled downward a little bit towards the spinal cord. And come all the way back. Don't just think, well, it's a tail piece. You know what? I'm gonna scrap this much of the fish. Please don't do that. You have to cut as far back as you can to the tail. Okay? So then I grab the whole thing and I turn it over. And so you can see there's still, you know, a fair amount of meat on there. Pick it up with both hands. Use it for tartare or something. Okay, wipe the station down, wipe my knife down. It's up to you on the fabrication of the fish. For instance, how you want to do this. Like, do you want to scale it first? If you want to scale it, of course that takes place before we do any of this, right? Then what I do is I take the fish, I turn it around away from myself, wipe my hands off again, and I come in here right above these bones. Okay? Now if you look, you can see those rib bones going down somewhat at a 45-degree angle towards the tail of the fish. And so what I want to do is I don't want to be cutting in this direction. I want to cut with it. So I'm going to feel right where those bones are, and I'm going to come right underneath them here. Let me cut this out. I'm going to come right underneath here. And then once again, my knife does not go towards the meat. I'm not angling my knife down. I'm pushing my knife upward towards these bones. And as I do that, I come in, I get a fair amount of a start, and then I make one smooth cut with my knife pointing towards those bones the whole time. And voila. Pretty much 90% done right on the first slice, right? You come back here, you clean this fat up, and then you come in here, there's possibly another rib bone, and you just very gently get underneath this stuff and come all the way out. Take the back of your knife and just scrape gently, right? It's going to get some of the scales off and things. And now, now I need to work on the pin bones. Yeah, the pin bones are right here. So I'm just going to very gently scrape in the opposite direction, but making sure I'm not tearing the meat. And look how I can get all those pin bones to stand up. You see how I'm doing that? Go and get my pliers and pull them out. Okay, once the pin bones are out, Then we're ready to go, and we're ready to take the skin off and do whatever else we need to do to the fish. Okay, so here